So hello everyone, welcome. Thank you for joining us for XRPL Insight on-chain finance. I'm Odelia Torteman, Head of Digital Assets for XRPL Commons. And on the XRPL Insight series, we're going to dive into some of the key use cases we're currently seeing across the XRP Ledger, focusing on-chain finance, and walk through how these new value proposition and XRPL-based product are emerging from concept design all the way to real live production. We're going to look into different key trends, some of the key products that we're seeing, and explore some of the latest developments across digital assets markets and the wider XRPL ecosystem. So over the past year, digital finance has accelerated greatly, moving far beyond being a mere asset into much more increasing list of different types of use cases that are basically targeting everyday life and everyday financial services and product. And within this shift, crypto cards sit in a very practical frontier. They're becoming a standard way to basically connect digital assets balance sheets into everyday payments, into everyday usable services, and basically connecting these assets that up until today used to live only on exchanges into basically usable element at the checkout terminal, often without the user even being aware of the whole infrastructure that it sits on. Now, increasingly, those new crypto cards have embraced a stablecoin first approach, being deployed on different types of ledgers, such as the XRP Ledger, designed from inception to support exactly this fast payment, fast settlement, and the support of different types of digital asset movement. And it is exactly in this context of today's conversation that we will be focusing and understanding how this new layer of basically crypto-based payment is operating and launched today on the XRP Ledger, and what are the different use cases and applications we can see. And in order to dive deep into this, we have a very special guest today, Taylor from RedotPay, which is a global stablecoin payment fintech with over 8 million registered users across 100 countries with around 12 billion annualized payment volume. RedotPay have recently launched their XRPL Card, which basically integrates both the RLUSD on the XRP Ledger to basically enable XRP-backed credit line settlement and different types of FX corridors. So first of all, Taylor, welcome on board. Great having you here.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. So why don't we start with a quick introduction of yourself and of the new RedotPay card?
Yeah, thanks a lot. So my name's Taylor. I'm the head of corporate affairs at RedotPay. Basically what that means is I help the company to tell its story to the whole spectrum of people who might be interested in using us or have other reasons to be interested in us, whether they're partners, investors, or just the wider community. And I do that through participating in events, press engagements, help making content with our partners like this one. And I think what we're here to really delve into is the RedotPay card, and also more specifically, the recent partnership that RedotPay and XRP came to agreement with and launched a card and an offering to our customers. So we knew that there were a lot of diehard XRP holders out there. We also know that there are a lot of XRP Ledger users who are using it every day for on-chain tasks. And what we wanted to do with this partnership is to basically leverage our existing technology that we've developed over a few years at RedotPay, and to basically enhance the options for XRP users to unlock spending power for everyday items, whether that's a coffee, whether that's an online subscription, whether that's paying for the monthly subscription to an AI service, for example, to basically unlock spending power with XRP without actually selling it. And so that's what we've done along with the team at XRP. We've come up with a way for people to pledge their XRP as collateral, instantly unlocking a credit line at about 50% LTV. So if you pledge $1,000 worth of XRP, for example, you'll get $500 to spend using the RedotPay card. And so that's a virtual card or a physical card. The virtual card works via Apple Pay and Google Pay. pretty much everywhere in the world, anywhere Visa is accepted. And so that's one of the ways, I think a pretty cool way that we're working with a fellow partner in XRP and XRP Ledger in basically expanding the utility of what XRP can be used for outside of on-chain transactions and into the world of everyday life.
Fantastic. So you dived straight into it, basically speaking about different types of spending aspects with crypto card. So I want to continue your thoughts, right? I mean, again, when we speak about stables-based crypto cards, there's different types of use cases, right? From different types of QR and digital payments on chain to the more, I would say, advanced use cases like the one you've mentioned, which basically introduce custodian balances that are funding the cards and the apps, and then basically enabling those digital assets to be converted into the local currency or into different types of other applications, as you mentioned. And I want to ask you, from RedotPay perspective, your platform, as we've mentioned, processed the quite a astonishing number of 12 billion USD annualized volume across 100 countries. You have a great perspective on different types of customers, regions, markets. What are basically the key use cases you're seeing your different customers using the XRP card or in general digital payments for? Which type of those segments do you see growing quite increasingly?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's important to step back and look at how stablecoin powered payments have actually really exploded in recent years. So the cumulative on-chain crypto card volume is actually just crossed another all-time high when you look at year-on-year growth. Year to date, just looking at between January and July 2026, where we are now, the card volume powered by stable coins has grown over 80%. And if you zoom out a little bit more and look at year on year, where we are today, that's actually a 250% growth. So the market's growing. I think that what that means is every single user segment or use case segment within that market is also growing. So you see a lot of people using stablecoin powered cards for different things. For RedotPay, we just crossed the 8 million user threshold, which is really exciting for us. A lot of our customers are using the card for consumer everyday items. So we see that the predominant use case, especially for users of our card in places like Latin America and Africa, people have a need for both affordable consumer goods and ways to get themselves on board to existing global payment rails, especially if they find it hard to sign up for a bank. So this goes for people who are underbanked. This goes for digital nomads who maybe are jumping between countries, working remotely, people who have changed their address a few times in the past year can often find it pretty difficult to get a card with a traditional bank. So it's that sort of use case that I think is one bucket in which our users fall into. They need reliability. They need the ability to plug into existing international payment rails. You can do that in 5 minutes after you sign up and verify your identity with a RedotPay card, and you can use it for Apple Pay and Google Pay to pay for things like groceries, coffee, transport, etc. I think the other predominant use case, and one that we're seeing really grow these days, is people who are using RedotPay for remittance. So if you look at different regions around the world, Latin America is one, the Middle East is another. There are a lot of people who are expats, and expat can mean a lot of different things. For people who are sending remittances back home, it's really powerful to have a platform and an app that you can do that very seamlessly and very quickly without having to go to a physical branch to send a wire, or to go to, again, to sign up for a traditional bank and have the T+3 settlement that comes with sending remittances in that case. So we see a lot of people also using our services for this. Basically, we want to have a big impact on people's lives. We know that people who are using RedotPay have busy lives. They're not necessarily in the trenches of crypto Twitter. They're not necessarily thinking about crypto rails or on-chain settlements. They just need a product that works. And so that's kind of the two buckets that we see a lot of our customers falling into, and a lot of the proliferation of use cases is coming from these two activities.
Yeah, very interesting. And I think that also where you guys are started your journey from, right, in Asia. I think Asia is a great blueprint and a very unique market, because digital money became mainstream there due to the very strong infrastructure that they have, making basically the entire payment experience, as you mentioned, quite invisible. You simply scan, tap, or move forward. And now we're seeing a very similar movement with different types of blockchain XRPL based rails, whether it's a bank, an e-wallet, or a stablecoin, which can basically just become an everyday habit. So my question to you would be, within this wider context of Asia, where do you see the inflection point, seeing very similar to what we've seen with digital money now happening with crypto assets and with stablecoins for payments?
Well, it's hard to generalize. Obviously, this is such a huge region. And I think it's also important to note at the top that actually RedotPay's users are predominantly outside of Asia. But you're right, this is where we've gotten our start. A lot of our employees are based here. I think what we observe in this region is that there's a high degree of financial literacy. There's a high degree of open-mindedness when it comes to embracing new ways of paying for things, whether that's through QR code payments, which I'll circle back to in a little bit, or whether that's the notion of just being open to using apps that help you do a lot of different things. I'm thinking about super apps like Grab, for example, which have, may have had their start as a transportation app, but really grew into a payment app and an everything app. So I think there's a lot of there's a lot of history and familiarity with that type of notion in this region, and that's interesting, because ultimately, if you kind of go back to what our goal is, we want, and I think this goes not just for RedotPay, but for a lot of the payment technology, blockchain payment, stablecoin payment industry in general. Our goal is to really help this technology become invisible to the end user. So we want a customer to tap at a payment terminal, pay for their coffee, pay for something at a merchant, and kind of forget what rails or what technologies are routing from A to B to get their money where it needs to be. Stablecoin powered payments help us get there. I would argue that we're not there yet, but that's really our ultimate goal. And so I'll give one specific example. In Southeast Asia, we're noticing greater use of instant QR payments with our app. This is something that's this behavior is endemic to Southeast Asia because of their embrace of super apps. They're used to whipping out their phone, going into an app and scanning a QR code at 7-Eleven, for example. So we want to evolve our technology to mirror the kind of behaviors that customers are used to. That's why we launched this scan feature very recently, which is available in Vietnam and the Philippines.
Fascinating. I think really Asia, exactly within this super app approach, has really became the home of the embedded finance, right? Users starting their journey at a certain app and then doesn't leave it to complete everything they want from diverse products and services on the same user interface, which I think again is quite a great pioneering example. And you've mentioned again, you touched on the differences between let's call it the more fiat-based digital money, digital payments versus stablecoins. Now, of course, stablecoins have become a huge instrument in financial markets these days, both in capital markets as well as from a retail perspective, moving much more to be the backbone, the monetary rail. Some even say that the future of digital payment is very much based on stablecoins. We're seeing major processes and different types of card networks that are launching their own ability to basically support direct settlements of different types of stablecoins like MasterCards and the RLUSD and others to make it faster, cheaper, and more seamless. My question to you is, again, given the examples that you've mentioned around the different retail applications, where does exactly stablecoins come more handy, or at least can tack a lot of the, let's call it, challenges the traditional payment rails have from the end user's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think instant or near instant settlement is probably the most obvious benefit. When I first joined crypto 6 years ago, a lot of the discourse in the community was all about displacing the traditional finance levers and channels. And we've seen that really actually the success and the adoption has come from complementing those channels or plugging into those channels. So I think, we need to recognize, I think, that the T+3 settlement system is going to eventually die out. It's going to be, but it's not going to be completely replaced with crypto rails. I think that for true adoption to happen, we need to augment what traditional finance is doing with the unique advantages that stablecoin payments give us, and with the unique advantages that digital blockchain ledgers like XRPL, for example, give people. So near instant settlement, high throughput, huge capacity for scale, I think is really important. But at the same time, we have to recognize that at every single payment processor level, at every single counter at a merchant, there's already built-in layers that allow people to pay easily with, you could say it's traditional methods, but really, if you look at it from an adoption standpoint, it's the most used methods, which still are the traditional fiat-based systems. So the trick for us is to bring the unique advantages of blockchain and blockchain payments, find a way to technically make them connect to each other. And I think one example of RedotPay is doing this is with our remittance services. So if I harken back to the previous example about a overseas worker, for example, in the Middle East who wants to send money home to their family in, say, the Philippines or Vietnam, for example, if that person has their holdings in a cryptocurrency like XRP or like Bitcoin or Ethereum, they can actually, through RedotPay, transfer crypto and have the conversion go through our technology, and it hits their family's traditional finance account in their local currency. So that's an example of how I think how far the industry has kind of moved, and as well as an example of how we can kind of optimize to get the best of both worlds with these things.
Yeah, I think that's a great example, right? Specifically, since you mentioned you guys are targeting both the tech nomads as well as the offshore overseas workers. And of course, remittance prices and charges and interest rates that are being charged the numbers are just over the roof, specifically in developing markets. So definitely a fantastic use case. The second use case you've mentioned, which I'd like you to maybe elaborate a bit more on, is how basically your users can put their XRP asset into work as collateral to receive different types of credit.
Yeah, I think that's good to go into. I think when let's say you're an XRP holder, and I know a lot of XRP holders and a lot of enthusiasts about the asset. If you're an XRP holder or a holder of any asset, a lot of times you have conviction in that asset. You don't want to say sell a bunch of XRP to pay rent for the next month or to cover a dinner out with friends. So we realize this. We know that's an attribute and a behavior of the community when it comes to XRP and other assets. So what we've done is we've built in actually a way for people to keep their holdings in XRP, but unlock a credit line of 50% of LTV so that they can actually unlock spending power, which they can easily spend at any merchant that takes a Visa card, while at the same time not having to liquidate those assets in order to access that credit line. So that's one example of how we can work together with communities. We can have insight into the behavior of those communities, the conviction of those communities, and in the assets that they use and they choose to hold, while at the same time making things practical. You can't. I know a lot of holders of assets, a lot of people who hold a high proportion of their assets in crypto, whether that's stable coins or various crypto assets. And there comes a time when you need to unlock some liquidity to just pay for things, or you want to use some of the gains that you've gotten through investments in digital assets to pay for everyday things. And so RedotPay makes that possible, and it's also I think a really good benefit of partnerships like the one we're talking about today, to make it possible for XRP holders, as an example, to do the same thing.
Absolutely. For me and also for us at XRPL, I think that credit on-chain is one of the most exciting things that are coming, I think, in general, to financial services and for digital finance. Because, we've spent so many years in building the infrastructure to enable the tokenization of assets, the settlement of assets, the transfer of them. And now we're bringing into life the next layer, which is how do we put these assets into work in a structured, standardized way. And this really goes hand in hand with the upcoming XRPL native lending protocol, which is currently in voting, that enables exactly that, goes together with the single asset vault amendment that enables you to aggregate liquidity from different types of assets that lives on the XRP ledger, whether it's the XRP, RLUSD, or even other RWA assets, and to basically put them into a pool and be able to, from one side, generate credit and loans from there, but also, of course, enabling yields to different types of XRP holders, retail or institutionals. So this is, of course, a very, very exciting thing. And I think that, again, the product that you guys have launched is a mere example of the art of the possible, if you will. And this basically leads me to, I call it the under the hood question, right? Where we can tap a bit more to the architectural design of the thing, and basically look into how do these payment rails actually settle. Now, of course, from the end user, everything is about abstracting this layer, making everything as seamless, as invisible as possible. But from the other hand, the entire settlement actually happens behind the scene, whereby you have the different types of players that needs to be working together, right? Whether it's a partner, the protocol, the card scheme in different aspects, and also integrated to the XRP Ledger. So my question to you is basically, how does basically your infrastructure plugs into this familiar card network and bank rail, and where does the XRP Ledger comes into place within your design architecture?
Yeah, so if we're talking about, let's say we're talking about like the credit example for XRP before. So if you pledge XRP on the RedotPay app, you will be extended a credit line of stablecoins. And that stablecoin then forms kind of like the originating asset of what you would then pay for at any old merchant. So let's say you're starting your workday, you want to pop into a coffee shop before you start, and you're using your stablecoin balance to do so. So you will use the Apple Pay or Google Pay function on the RedotPay app. The transaction will be paid through, and if you do use Apple Pay, for example, there's a transaction fee that is paid through that provider. But basically, if we zoom out and look at it, we need to, as RedotPay, we need to facilitate the transfer of value between an existing liquid stablecoin, and the merchant doesn't expect a stablecoin necessarily. They expect whatever local currency that you're settling in. So that entails a variation in different markets, but it's basically a sequence of banking partners as well as payment partners that help to do the conversion as well as the settlement on the back end. And the user pays about a 1% transaction fee to help facilitate that. So I think that we're getting closer to abstracting away at least the user experience. And there's a lot of things on the platform side in terms of UX and what we present to the user and how we walk the user through actually managing their assets that we want to make it a lot easier for people to swap assets and without paying gas, et cetera. But to answer your question, there's a sequence of settlement and banking partners that is slightly different in each market, depending on the currency that you're settling in, that RedotPay through kind of like the blood, sweat, and tears of the team and the partnerships and commercial agreements on the back end that they've been able to strike on behalf of the users to get to that fee as low as possible it is doing. And that's, I think, one of the values that we provide.
Yeah, absolutely. And when a player like yourself, when a platform like yourself chooses indeed to launch a crypto card, of course, everything that comes with it from the protocol itself and its features and capabilities, settlement time, speed, velocity, security, as well as other primitives on the ledger becomes crucial. The partnership itself, the network that the protocol itself brings is extremely crucial itself, as well as the assets that lies there. So you guys again chose to launch with XRP and RLUSD. Keen to learn a bit about the decision process there. What are the key things that made you look into those assets and to the XRPL protocol as the winning solution and the optimal platform for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's both partnership driven. It's also architecturally driven, based on the strength of the XRP Ledger in general. First, to, I think, focus on the partnership side, we've been really close with Ripple since the beginning, and we worked together to support a different range of initiatives that have brought value to our shared community. I think that we did quite recently a campaign that was under the umbrella of the remittance capability that I was talking about earlier, where it's spend crypto, receive Nigerian naira via Ripple payments. So that's something I think that brings together the stablecoin element, the fiat settlement element as well. That was one of the precursors, I guess, to our current partnership. And if you go back to why we're doing this. I think that we also have some shared convictions when it comes to accelerating financial access globally. There's a realization between both of our organizations that stablecoin-based payments really need to become part of everyday life to help expand financial access globally. This is not just for people who are already well served by traditional finance. This is also for people who find it hard to jump through hoops to be well served by traditional finance. And that's one of the ways in which crypto and our respective organizations can make a difference. When we're talking about the ledger, the XRP Ledger side of things, I mean, it's pretty simple. Where we need more blockchains like XRP Ledger with reliable infrastructure. One thing that's really attractive is the independent validator mechanism, and of course, extremely low settlement time as well as cost, high throughput, high volume. So there are a bunch of technical things as well, which makes entering into a partnership like this a pretty easy decision for us. So it's both, really. It's the architecture, it's the technology, it's also the shared convictions of both of our organizations to try to make a difference with what we're doing.
Absolutely. And working with, again, partners like yourself, really introducing these new products. So now basically giving these XRP cards, basically you enable the XRP community, right, to use their assets and to basically borrow against them, to have further support, further, I would say, ratio in terms when it comes to FX corridors. You mentioned in Nigeria and in other markets as well. And basically enabling them to use stablecoin as the benchmark for everyday utility payments, from merchants to SMEs to offshore, as you mentioned, workers, as well as to the tech digital nomads and the wider XRP community that now potentially will be able to, again, use XRP and other assets to put them into work and potentially generate some yields. So that's extremely, extremely exciting for us. I want to ask you, what do you see basically the next three looking like? Right. So we've mentioned a lot of the things from a pure digital finance perspective. We, of course, have been extremely active also on the intersection with AI and how can we move into a more autonomous flow. Of course, stablecoins sits at the heart of autonomous agents and the agentic commerce, complete settlement rails agent by agent, specifically much more relevant to the whole merchants world. So keen to hear from you, where do you see the next 3 years going on that aspect?
I think it's going to be really fascinating to see how far this wave of or this influx of stablecoin powered card volume, how far it can really take us, and how much more adoption we can get. I think that we are really in the early innings. I mean, RedotPay is less than 3 years old, which is quite impressive with the amount of things that the team has been able to do in that short time. And to go from nothing to 8 million people who are using our app for real stablecoin enabled financial transactions is pretty impressive. But I think it's just the first few innings when we're talking about stablecoin enabled payments. There's a lot of talk right now about agentic. I think it's even earlier in the discussion to talk about how big agentic could get. But I think that's actually going to move really, really quickly because AI-driven commerce is just getting so much investment right now. It's something that we are definitely getting prepared for. We have a RedotPay skill feature that we're going to make available in a matter of weeks, actually, which is really exciting. But I think next 3 years, it's partly going to be a building phase. It takes a lot of work, a lot of elbow grease to get licenses, to make sure our compliance is the best that it can be, to cement banking partnerships, to make sure that we can connect our users to traditional finance rails. I think so. A lot of it is not going to be sexy, so to speak. A lot of it's going to continue to be partnerships, increasing our currency offering, onboarding new blockchains and assets, and looking at where users already are. For example, like the Southeast Asia behavior that prompted our launch of Scan to Pay. We really need to not get complacent, even though we're kind of in the midst of this huge wave of stablecoin payment adoption. We can't afford to be complacent. We need to always have our eye on the ball because things move fast. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be exciting. I wish I knew what was going to happen in the next 3 years, let alone the next year. But I do think that it's going to be defined by how far this wave of stablecoin payment adoption goes.
Absolutely. Fully agree. I think indeed, like you mentioned, from one side, we see regulation coming together, right, with much more defined framework from the Genius and Clarity Act with the current aspects that we have there, but also MiCA, of course, paving the way, and in Asia, different types of framework that standardize stablecoins. From the other side, the agentic web, right, the agentic finance. I think that the promise that distributed ledger technology brings on the sense of tokenizing and creating a representation to much more financial assets that up until today were not able to have this appropriate standardized way opens the whole new world of how different types of agent can basically work upon them and take it again into, honestly, really the future of digital finance. And on that aspect, we have also launched a few weeks ago the XRPL AI Toolkit, which basically offers exactly that, a very standardized plug-and-play SDK way to developers to start and harness and experiment with agents on the XRP Ledger. And I agree with you, this is only the beginning. So we're very excited from what's coming next. Any last statements from you, Taylor, to the XRPL community from your side?
I think the main thing that from all of us at RedotPay is that we really are going to continue to work with your community as much as we can. I think that the launch of XRP as an asset, RLUSD support on the RedotPay app is a starting point. It's not the ending point. We know that the community is vocal. We know that you have conviction. We know that in many cases, you want the ability to use your holdings without selling them to help access spend or credit to use for everyday things. So we're going to continue to work with the XRP team to see how we can best serve you, and we promise to stay close. So we'd appreciate if you'd also stay close with us.
Absolutely, Tyler. This is only the beginning. So thank you so much, first of all, for your partnership and for building this great, again, solution, XRP Card, now live on RedotPay, enabling exactly a lot of the elements we spoke about today. Looking forward for what we can bring together in the future, and of course, to staying in touch very closely. So thank you for sharing your insights today. And looking forward to the next time.
Thanks, same here.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thanks.